Hey guys, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite movies, and this is my 700th video on YouTube. Yeah. Technically it is. I have uploaded a few more videos on YouTube before, but I've deleted them, so like three of my videos are blocked, so they don't count. So this video is technically the 700th video, and I'm going to make it count. I'm going to make this video a very special video. That is why I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite movies of all times, Inception, by the mastermind Christopher Nolan, who is straight up one of my favorite directors of all times and also one of the best directors out there. Definitely the favorite director of many moviegoers and film students around the world. He is very well known for his very cognitive and very complicated movies that usually dabbles into very interesting plot, but the interesting premise is not wasted on bad plot. Usually they get super duper complicated. We have very complicated time jumping, flash forward, flash back. Memento, we have the movies following, Insomnia, the incredibly dark but also epic The Batman trilogy, also super cognitive and transcendent Interstellar. The Prestige is also an amazing movie, and Dunkirk is a bit of an artsy but equally as smart and as cerebral of a war movie. But my personal favorite Christopher Nolan movie is Inception. I know it's a little cliche, but I have to admit, I've watched this movie like many years ago. I think I was about 12 or 11 when I first saw this movie. I thought it was super duper entertaining, really fun to watch, a lot of cool visuals, but I didn't really get it all that much other than it's a movie about dreams, which is by default super interesting already. Come on, it's about dreams. Everybody is interested about dreams because dreams is still one of the few things that scientists just fail to explain. It's such an enigmatic, strange phenomenon. But anyway, I rewatched this movie a few times because I love it a lot, and I think I kind of get it. But still, at this very moment, years later, after rewatching this movie a few times, there are still bits in this movie where I find it hard to comprehend, even though I think I do, but I might be wrong because it's very complicated of a movie. So the movie centers around Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a professional dreamer who can do things that are barely legal, but in dreams, so he doesn't get caught. And he extracts information, secrets, forgotten secrets from a person in their dreams, and he can also plant ideas in a person's dreams. But then, of course, we have a bunch of other characters as well. Cobb used to have a wife named Maul, but she died inside the deepest layer of any dreams possible, thus not being able to return in real life. Also, we have the other people who are also working with Cobb. We have Eames, who's played by Tom Hardy brilliantly. We have Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Arthur. We have Yusuf, who is later introduced in the movie as a person who produces sedatives so that they could dream longer. Eames is an impersonator, and we later on have another character called Ariadne, who's played by Ellen Page, who works as an architect. So Cobb couldn't really return to the USA because apparently people are suspecting that he murdered his wife, which is actually not true. So this guy Saito decided to help him. Saito would kind of free his charge, lift his murder charges, if Cobb helps him defeat his corporate rivalry, who is Fisher, played by Cillian Murphy. And since Fisher's father just passed away, the Dreamers decided to use this opportunity to plant an idea inside Fisher's head by sort of twisting and manipulating Fisher's father's last words. But this is actually a super difficult task to do, so they have to do it in many layers of dreams, and it needs to be very carefully built. The dreams need to be very carefully constructed, and everything needs to go perfectly. Otherwise, the whole mission is gonna screw up. It's gonna mess up. So the whole movie is actually pretty tense. So there you go. That's the plot. It's really complicated. And before I talk about the plot itself, I'm just gonna talk about other things in the movie which I absolutely love. First of all, the cast ensemble is fantastic. It is incredible. We have Leonardo DiCaprio, we have Marion Cotillard, we have Ken Watanabe as Saito, we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Arthur, Ellen Page as Ariadne, Tom Hardy as Eames, we have Cillian Murphy as Fisher, also Marco Kani. And the visuals in the movie is absolutely stunning. There are so many shots in Inception which totally stuns me. The cinematography is fantastic. I mean, it's nothing too artsy, but it is breathtaking. It is epic, and usually it's just so visually pleasing. Just to name a few, the first shot when Cobb went to the little dining room that old Saito was in. That shot was great. We have a lot of shots in Limbo where buildings crumble into the ocean, and it's this really beautiful dystopian wasteland. It's absolutely stunning. The hotel, the camera work in the hotel, yeah, that's something. And so much more. The visual effects are also just friggin' insane. Christopher Nolan tries his best to use as little visual effects, computer-generated CGI, as possible. Except when it is basically impossible to pull off, like that scene where Cobb and Ariadne were chatting in a cafe really nicely, and all of a sudden, everything blew up around them. Everything. And of course, it didn't actually take place in real life. They were in a cafe, and Cobb asked Ariadne, do you remember? How did we get here? And Ariadne's like, oh wait, fuck, we're dreaming. And then everything just blew up. The cars, the buildings, the cafe, the glass, bricks under the ground just burst into the air, but not violent bursts, but very elegant bursts. And the fact that they're computer generated, it's wow. It's it's impressive because it looks realistic and it looks breathtaking. Another scene that I really just love is the hallway anti-gravity scene. That scene is one for the ages. It is an iconic scene that a lot of people talk about, and I'm going to talk about that soon in the video as well. But the visuals, the editing, the sound editing and mixing, the visual effects, just every technical stuff in the movie is fantastic. The acting is excellent as well. And then we have the score by Hans Zimmer, quite possibly the best film composer of our generation. He had done like a laundry list of movies. In fact, I think the soundtrack to the movie is so great that I've actually listened to the soundtrack album like multiple times. And usually I don't do that. Usually I don't listen to like a particular soundtrack album to a movie multiple times unless it's that good. It's that good. Inception soundtrack, it's that good. Of course, we have the title theme with the very surreal but also tense, prickly guitars. We have the Mombasa Suite, which is absolutely intense. I actually used that track, the Mombasa Suite, as one of the soundtracks to one of my unofficial short films because it was just so good, just so tense. And we have the track Time, which is one of the most beautiful and just transcendent and powerful and emotionally potent tracks in film score I've ever heard. It appears towards the end of the movie, and it's just so powerful. It just holds so much weight. It's crushing. It's just really impressive that Christopher Nolan would successfully blend the very entertaining action sequences and the kind of artsy, cerebral, sort of intelligent plot and premise together to make what's possibly the best movie of the decade. Yes, I've said it. This might actually be my favorite movie of the decade. Apparently, Christopher Nolan had been developing this movie for well over a decade before he started making this movie. So the fact that this movie is super well written, super well thought out, it's no surprise. And given that Christopher Nolan is a mastermind, same goes for Jonathan Nolan, who made Westworld, another total mind twister. This movie is truly clever and complicated in the best way possible. The lore, the system in this movie itself is enough to make a series of novels or a TV show. In fact, fun fact, I thought Inception was a TV show before I watched the movie. But anyway, there are a few things that you need to note before really diving into the story. First of all, there are things called totems, which helps dreamers distinguish between reality and dreaming. And only the person can touch it. So for Cobb, it is a top. He spins it, and if the top never falls, it means that he's in a dream because the weight is less in dreams, apparently. But in reality, of course, it falls. For Arthur, it is a dice, and different people have different totems, and that's a really cool concept. Another concept that I really like is the fact that time works differently in dreams. Time is slower in dreams than in real life. So in Inception, dreaming for 1 minute in real life will get you dreaming for 5 minutes in a dream, and etc., etc. For each layer down, time works 12 times slower, but if you are on sedatives, it's 20 times slower. So if you have done the maths, you would know that a complicated mission that involves 3 layers of dream would sort of yield like 10 years in layer 3 if the reality takes place for 10 hours. The dreaming in reality takes place for 10 hours. I just really love how Christopher Nolan toys with time, like the theory of relativity on Interstellar, and also the really weird timeline overlapping on Dunkirk, because time is such an interesting thing, also such a scary thing. Also, it brings so much emotions out of people because it holds so much value. Time is truly one of the most powerful things in the world, if not the most powerful. I mean, time is the oldest thing in the world because time starts when time starts. Yes, when starts, time starts. When anything starts, time starts. Time is frightening. But anyway, back to the movie. This movie, some people don't like this movie because there is a lot of exposition, a lot of explaining in the movie, but come on. With a premise and plot points and a system this complicated in a movie, you have to really explain it to the audience. Otherwise, the audience wouldn't know what the heck is happening in the movie. So, of course, there is a lot of explaining in the movie, and I totally don't mind that. In fact, I like that because Christopher Nolan doesn't spend a lot of time trying to explain every single thing and concept about the whole premise to its audience, but he manages to do it anyway with as little time and as little dialogue as possible so that the viewers would understand. And he sort of puts all these scenes together like a compilation, like a montage, and it's actually kind of entertaining to see the explanation being done in such an entertaining way. But basically, the first act of the movie is very action packed. We are in the middle of one of Cobb's missions, and then we have the second half of the movie where the main mission takes place, and it's amazing. The entirety of the movie is amazing. The opening scene starts off with Cobb washed up on a beach. Just, yeah, classic movie opening. Washed up on a beach. And then afterwards, he entered Saito's place in this really nice Japanese castle. But Saito was super old, and it was this really ambiguous opening. And then we jumps back to like many years ago, where Cobb was at the same position and Saito was at the same position, but like way younger, plus Arthur. And so we have the first mission where Cobb was supposed to extract some sort of information in Saito's dream. But Saito already had that figured out, so it was already really intense right off the bat. And in the middle of the mission, we realized that that place is actually just a layer 2. We still have layer 1, dream layer 1, where the dreamers are in this apartment in some sort of place which was in like a riot, in the middle of a riot, in the middle of a rebellion, which is very chaotic. So the people who are awakened on layer 1 must wake up the people who are still dreaming in layer 2 because they have to escape, otherwise they die and fail the mission. So one of the dreamers in layer 1 gave Cobb a kick, pushed him into a tub of water, and when Cobb was in dream layer 2, just water rushes in all corners, just bursting in such an epic and dramatic way. And that is another amazing shot that stuck to my head for a very long time. Afterwards, in reality, Saito and Arthur and Cobb talks about the mission, and Cobb assembled a team to carry out that mission. So we have the second half of the movie. But before the second half, we have scenes where Cobb tries to recruit people, and there's a scene where Cobb tries to recruit Eames, played by Tom Hardy, where they were at Mombasa. And again, those scenes in Mombasa are fantastic, especially the scene where Cobb was being chased by people. When you're dreaming, your consciousness starts to be aware of activity in your subconsciousness. So there would be people in the dreams taking place in your subconsciousness who starts to get conscious about it, so they start to get hostile towards the dreamers. So there's another concept. So basically in Mombasa, which is apparently actually a dream, there were people who starts to be conscious of an intruder, aka Cobb. So they started chasing Cobb, and there's this scene where Cobb was stuck between two buildings in this very narrow alleyway where he's just trying to just get through and escape. That was a hell of a scene. That was suspenseful. I also really loved the scene when Arthur sort of explained the concept of Penrose steps to Ariadne, one of the most classic optical illusions in the world. But when you're dreaming, because anything is possible, you can actually make that happen, which is later used in the second half. And then we have the scenes where Cobb basically taught Ariadne how to dream, how to build dreams, construct dreams, all that stuff. And when Ariadne and Cobb was at Paris, but it was actually just a dream, Ariadne decided to fold the city in half. Fold in half. This is the city, right? And it just folds in half, like buildings here, and then it's just building, road. Fold in half. Yes. That scene was stunning, okay? That scene was breathtaking. And then there's another scene where Ariadne built this mirror. She broke the mirror and it becomes this new bridge. It just goes to show how powerful our imaginations can be, how powerful creativity can be. Anyway, off to the second half, the juiciest part of the movie where the mission takes place. Layer 1, who is built by Yusuf, basically New York, raining, and there was a pretty dystopian start for the dream sequence, which I actually really love, but it just gets more and more surreal and desolated as we dive deeper into the layers of dreams. So we have layer 1, and right off the bat, it's already action-packed. People are already conscious about the dream intruders, the subconscious intruders, and they start shooting. And Saito got shot, unfortunately, but because Saito is in sedatives, in reality, he can't wake up, and if he kills himself, the mission would, not work out as well. So he had to stay being alive, and to do that, he needs to keep on dreaming. But if he dies in a very deep layer of dream, he legit dies in real life, and he can never return. So that is pretty bad on Saito's part. One of the scenes in layer 1 is where Joseph Gordon-Levitt was firing at some enemies, at some conscious people, and Tom Hardy was like, "You mustn't afraid to dream a little bigger, darling." Boom! That was badass. There's also this scene where in the middle of the road, suddenly there's a train. There's a friggin' train just crashing into one of the main roads of New York City. And it just made a very lasting impression on me because I haven't seen anything like that before. Afterwards, we move on to layer 2, which gets more and more interesting. So, the people continued to dream inside Yusuf's car, and Yusuf was driving, and Yusuf stayed in layer 1. And if they crash the car, then the kick happens, and so they have to wake up. But since time works slower in the next layer of dream, they actually have more time than 5 seconds to plant an idea into Fisher's head. So in layer 2, we are inside a hotel where it is built by Arthur. And Cobb started to approach Fisher, and things started to get weird. The car in layer 1 sort of drifts, so the entire hotel tilts. That's amazing. Later on, some other car crashed into Yusuf's car, and Yusuf's car literally flipped. So in that hotel, in the hallway, while everyone was dreaming, getting to layer 3, Arthur was left behind, and Arthur and this other guy fought in like a hallway in a hotel, and the entire hallway, the gravitation in the hallway just kept on rotating. So they were literally fighting on walls and on ceilings and just in a cycle. There's even a moment where Arthur and another guy fought in a hotel room where the gravity keeps on rotating. That is friggin' amazing. That's one of the most impressive scenes I've seen in a movie. Definitely entertaining, very original, and they actually shot it without any computer CGI. They actually built the rotating corridor. It's insane. And then the car in layer 1 went into the water. So there was no gravity. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt was literally in like a vomit comet, like an anti-gravity, like a zero gravity uh, 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 place to film this scene, which is amazing. And of course, we have the Penrose steps, which ended his fight with this stranger. Anyway, we move over to layer 3, where we are in this very snowy place, and we actually have a very neat skiing sequence in the movie, which nobody is talking about. But of course, Cobb's memories start to show, and because Cobb's former wife Mal killed herself in a deep layer of dream in limbo, and she couldn't return. So and Cobb was haunted by Mal's death. So Mal keeps on popping up because Mal's always in Cobb's subconscious. So in Dream Layer 3, Mal showed up and straight up killed Fisher. Mission failed. Uh, but but Cobb and Ariadne came up with this idea to bring Fisher down to another layer of dream to revive him there, so that Fisher could return to layer 3, so that the idea could be planted in his head. And so they went to layer 3, where Cobb really straight up confronts Mal, who is actually basically only a figment of imagination / memory in Cobb's subconscious. So basically, Cobb's consciously fighting against his subconsciousness in layer 4, which is basically Cobb's own apartment, but also the limbo, or maybe not, because limbo is really the 5th layer in that journey, so it's not really limbo yet. But basically, Saito died as well, but Fisher got revived, but Saito died in layer 3. So because Cobb wanted to save Saito, and he knew that Saito would end up in limbo if he dies in Dream Layer 3 because of these strong sedatives, Cobb decided to go to limbo at the very end. And again, the shots in limbo, they are amazing. And there's this huge storm that happened because somebody's trying to wake Fisher up in layer 3 with electrocution, I think. So there were like lightning. So everything was breaking apart. It was just really cinematic. And then we finally reached the limbo, where Cobb washes up on a beach, gets washed up on a beach, enters Saito's place, and at that point they were already really old. Because again, if you have remembered that there's this huge time system in dreaming, you'd realize that Cobb might have stayed in limbo for like decades. And that's heartbreaking, because time is scary, and if you spend so much time being there and not being in reality, it hurts. It really hurts. But anyway, at the end, Cobb saved Saito. Spoiler alert, by the way, minor spoiler alert, but at the end, the mission totally succeeded, and it was a clutch at the end when they had to save Saito. So yeah, at the end, they all woke up from the airplane with the very powerful soundtrack playing in the back, and Cobb was just looking around like, oh my gosh, I'm back in reality. It's been like decades since I was dreaming. I kind of forgot. Oh my gosh. And they're all sitting on a plane. It's like the way before they started to dream. And that's just really powerful. Like a very powerful moment. It just goes to show how powerful imaginations and minds and subconsciousness can be. But also it shows how much is hidden underneath the facade that is reality, and how much weight reality can hold when it seems like it's not really that heavy. Especially at the very end, when Cobb was leaving at the airport, and other characters keep on showing up in the background, sort of giving Cobb a glance. Very powerful, and very awesome-tastic ending as well. But the final scene of the movie is where Cobb finally returns to the USA because the charges are dropped apparently, and he finally gets to reunite with his kids, which is something that he had been very, very, very wanting to do ever since the beginning. And then he spins the top, and before we get to see the result of the top spin, the movie ends. So we don't know if he's still dreaming or if this is real life. And I love it. I absolutely love the ending. This ending has been on people's minds and has been topics of many conversations of many people, and I'm glad that this movie ended on an ambiguous note. And me personally, I don't want to know the answer. I don't think Christopher Nolan knows either, because as a writer, you kind of want the audience to take in all the necessary information possible. So if Christopher Nolan wants people to know about the nature of reality in the ending, he wouldn't really end it on an ambiguous note. But yeah, wow. What a great, great, great movie. Not only does this movie explore the nature of dreams and subconsciousness, which is extremely interesting. Just the premise alone, super interesting. The plot is even better, but also this movie explores haunting memories and broken love, as well as showing how powerful our imaginations and creativity can be. And I'm gonna be honest here, this is one of the first few movies that made me like movies. It's one of the most important movies in my life. Second of all, I was very obsessed about dreaming because of this movie. Because of this movie, I started my dream journal, and I think I've written down like, I think 300 or 400 dreams already, ever since around 2014, 15, I think. I forgot, but it's like I have a lot of dreams written down already, like not on paper, like on a Google document right now. Yeah, this movie really means a lot to me, and still to this day, I think oneirology is one of the most interesting and most undiscovered parts in science and in philosophy in general. And I really hope that there are more oneirologists out there. In fact, this movie inspired me to write a story about dreaming. Uh, yeah, a series of stories. I've been writing and rewriting that story for a while now. I've started it since like 2017, or maybe 16. But yeah, just dreams, layers within layers, precognitive dreams, uh, just dreams. They really tell a lot about a person's mind. And I'm just gonna leave it at that note. This is a brilliant movie. It's great in all aspects. I love every single moment, every single scene in the movie, and even though it's 2.5 hours long, I kind of want more. Um, yeah, this movie is mind blowing, and I'm giving it 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10, undoubtedly. Not even a strong 9 to a 10. 10. Straight up 10. So, have you watched Inception? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching.